Welcome to Chinwag Tuesdays, your passport to a world of language and culture. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Chinwag Tuesdays. I'm Amanda, and today we have Akash, originally from India. He's now an immigration lawyer based in Melbourne. Thank you so much for joining me today, Akash.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Let's do a self-introduction. It's something that I always get my guests to do at the beginning. A little bit more about yourself. I know I've said that you're an immigration lawyer, but a bit more about what you do. So what kind of clients you might take on or what law you specialize in.
Sure. Before I go into the professional introduction, maybe starting off with something on a personal note. I migrated to Australia as an international student back in 2018. And I was a practicing lawyer back in India. Some personal life challenges made me to decide to come to Australia to pursue further studies. And then I paved up my way from a master's degree to doing a diploma to getting myself registered as a solicitor in Australia. And since almost 5 years, so since end of 2020, I was fortunate enough to get work experience in the immigration industry. And I worked for firms and I worked for different agents and lawyers for about 5 years, mainly one for a very extended period of time, which built a lot of, I would say, experience. And more importantly, I got to know what are the key issues immigrants in Australia face. And I decided to continue the path and build my specialization in immigration law. And 8 months ago, I started my own firm, which I like to call MAD Migration. MAD stands for my Aussie Dreams, and onwards and upwards now. So that's a bit about me and my journey.
That's amazing. Yeah, congratulations for starting MAD. I love that, by the way, my Aussie dream.
Thank you.
All right. So, what are the most common mistakes that you see migrants make when applying for an Australian visa, and how can they avoid them?
Well, okay, good question. First mistake they make is listening to friends and family. Yeah, and out of probably 10 calls that I would take on a weekly basis, there'll be 3 or 4 people coming to me and saying, oh, my friend told me to do this, my housemate told me to do that, my uncle told me to go into this course. Now, and then that's number one mistake.
Of a friend of a friend?
Yeah, exactly. A friend of a friend. I don't know who, I don't remember the name of the person, but I got to know this from someone, so I started doing this. Now,
Yeah.
getting assistance with or from unauthorized agents or unregistered agents, or sometimes education agents. Now, I have a very simple way of explaining this. If you need to get operated, will you go to a doctor or will you go to a butcher just because it costs cheaper? You know?
That is a great analogy. I love it.
So,
Yeah.
and now, I mean, of course, it will cost you cheaper. Maybe the butcher will do it for free, but will he do a as good job as a doctor? No. So, getting the guidance from the right person is always very important. And that's the number one mistake they make. And how can they avoid it is probably by researching. Nowadays, a lot of options are available on, if you search simply Google, Instagram, or ask your friends and family around you as to if they know anybody specialized in the field that they're looking for assistance with, and get connected to them. And not just speak to me or one or two, just maybe speak to 3 or 4 and then see who you vibe with and who you feel that you can trust, and then assign your matter to them. That's, I think, the number one mistake. And the sometimes the second mistake they make is sometimes immigrants take this process of immigration too lightly, right? They think that it's just a form filling job. So why do I need any professional at all? Which is fair, right? I tell my clients that, look, you're not appointing me to take care of your forms. That's not rocket science. You're appointing me for the strategic intervention you need at every interval so that you're on the right journey. And the analogy that I have for this is, yes, you can get results in the gym without a personal trainer, but would it be as fast and as good if you had a personal trainer? So don't take this process too lightly. Don't start off it very slow. Don't think that, okay, the government is going to come to your home and give you the visa or whatever your next goal is. It will require careful planning and implementation. So being aware about your options from the get-go and taking right steps, baby steps towards it, so that there's no last minute rush or panic. These are the two main, I would say, common mistakes that I feel migrants make, and
Yeah.
this is how they can avoid them.
Yeah, I really love your advice on maybe getting a second, third, or fourth opinion, seeing what people are saying, and then deciding who you best vibe with or fit with. Because if you choose someone that you don't like, then I feel like that's going to be a really rocky relationship from the beginning. So getting that kind of advice, but getting the correct advice. You don't want to pick someone just because they're telling you what you want to hear either.
Correct.
Because I'm sure that there's probably some migration agents, unfortunately, out there who have all of these big dreams and promise these big things, promise these big dreams that you want to hear, but maybe aren't necessarily accurate.
So, very true. If it sounds too good to be true, then it is. This is what I learned during my
Yes.
student days.
Yeah, absolutely. I also really appreciate what you said about how don't listen to friends or family or someone knows someone who knows someone or whatever it is. I get, and we talked about this when we connected last year, that I get messages, they're not so frequent, I'd say probably one a month, one every couple of weeks, where someone says, I want to come to Australia, can you help me? Because people assume I'm Australian, I know everything about Australia. And I'm like, well, I can't help you because I'm not an immigration agent or an immigration lawyer. I teach Australian English, and that's my extent of, and culture as well. That's my extent of Australia. But I can't help you migrate. And people don't like that answer, that they don't like hearing no.
Yeah, yeah. So true. And that's your
right.
ethics and your honesty that you say that to them upfront. There are so many people who
Yeah.
are probably doing something completely random, but just because the immigration process on the face of it looks easy, they'd probably say, yes, I'll help you. And then they'll get their file processed through
Yeah.
somebody else, get commissions in between. And
Yeah.
it's a dirty,
Oh,
game which luckily you or I are not
Yeah.
part of. So that's great.
yes. Yeah, definitely. That's when I refer people to you.
Thank you.
All right. So international students, this is obviously something you experienced yourself, which obviously makes what you do even more, I think, special, because you do have that empathy and you can sympathize with your clients. So how can international students in Australia best prepare for a smooth transition to either a work visa or permanent residency?
You come here to study, you sign a declaration that your intention to come to Australia is temporary and you're coming here as a genuine student. So let's say if you, and even the government, and of course all the international students, more than 40% of the students who come here to study, they get their permanent residency and stay back. So the facts are not hidden from the government. So it's not like they don't know. But then if you make it too obvious, so for example, if you come here to do a bachelor's of IT or bachelor's of engineering, and then you come here and without even trying to study that course, you switch to a degree which is cheaper and has a easier pathway to PR, then you will be caught. If people have not been caught until now, they have started doing that. You see so many reports of students being held off at the airport and asked or being deported
Yeah.
because they changed their course or they didn't have an answer to why they did what they did. So
Yeah.
so I'm starting off with answering what you shouldn't do, right? Don't do this because
Yes.
if you try to misuse the system, there are going to be repercussions. The system allows you to have a pathway to permanent residency. That is exactly why after studying a course, you get a work visa and you get options to transition to your permanent residency. So use the system to your advantage.
Yeah.
Don't be so greedy that I want my permanent
Yeah.
residency. And some people come and tell me, I have a 4-year degree. Can I shorten it to 2 years, get my permanent residency so that I don't have to pay the fees for the next 2 years? For the last, and I'm like, don't do that. Like, I mean, it's a country has given you an option to transform your life. Don't at least misuse it. And
Yeah.
talking about a smooth transition, so if your goal from the start is to get a permanent residency, then it is best to seek advice from an immigration lawyer or a migration agent before you arrive in Australia, rather than relying on education agents. Yes, they are good, and some of them are really good. I admire some of them. I take some of them help, some of their helps for my clients who wants to get admission. but they are not immigration advisors. So if you're clear before you're arriving that your goal is PR, speak to somebody who knows and can give you PR pathways. Or once you arrive and after 3, 4, 6 months, you start liking the country and you're like, no, I see my future here, because there is no punishment for change of mind. Okay. So if you come here and you feel like you want to stay back, speak to a lawyer or an agent at the time and get guidance. And I would say, again, what I said in the first topic or answer, that if you leave it to last minute, then there's no miracle that's going to happen, or there's no, I'd say, no shortcut pathways that can be framed or carved out so that you can stay back.
Yeah.
So yeah, being aware about your options, evaluating them to an advisor, and having a strategy in place. These 4 things, if anybody follows,
Perfect.
it's a good way to start.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what is the difference between an education agent and an immigration agent or an immigration lawyer?
Well, I mean, glad that you asked that. Now, education agents they're mainly, I mean, they're based everywhere, of course, in Australia, outside of Australia, but there are more outside of Australia. So education agents are people who have the business of study abroad. Like if you go to
Sure.
any city I'm talking about India because that's where I'm from. Any major city, you will find study abroad companies in every street, because studying abroad
Yeah.
is a big industry.
There's one around the corner.
Exactly. Now, those are more of education agents, right? They have nothing to do with
Okay.
immigration. They charge no fees from you to handle your file, because they get commission from the university or the college they place you in.
Right.
And these
Okay.
commissions are sometimes so huge that even if the person doesn't want to be greedy, they will get greedy. So they'll put you into a course which has no relevance to your goals. Like
Okay.
I say this based on my experience. I mean, when I went to a local education agent in my area, he suggested me to do an MBA. And then I realized everybody that came to him, he was sending all of them to MBA, because they've got this quotas to fill for the university or college that they're representing. They've promised them 30 students. So a
Yeah.
doctor also does an MBA, a lawyer also does an MBA, a nurse also does an MBA. So imagine going to a salon and getting the same haircut for everybody who goes in. There is nothing personalized.
Yeah.
There is nothing tailored about it. Just
Yeah.
so those are, I would say, some of them are really good, but most of them are there for the money. Migration agent or an immigration lawyer, there's difference between these two as well, but they're both
Yeah.
qualified immigration advisors.
Yeah.
MARA registered migration agents are people who've completed a diploma in immigration law, completed a
Sure.
capstone exam, and then gotten their license to help migrants with their visa issues. And immigration lawyers are generally lawyers who've studied either a bachelor's or a master's in Australia, completed their supervision, and for lawyers it's a long pathway, roughly around 6 years, and get
Yeah.
registered as a solicitor, and then they build their expertise through
Yeah.
their experience in immigration.
Okay. All right. So an education agent and let's say a like lawyer or immigration advisor or agent, sorry, they are almost like complementary services. They kind of work side by side in a way, but they're not a replacement for each other.
Right. So because of the thin difference, or a thin line, a lot of education agents go into the business of providing immigration services, and a lot of immigration advisors also choose to give education services. But let's say
Yeah.
if it was a very big organization who have education and migration services, for education they will have education counselors,
Sure.
and for immigration they will have MARA registered migration advisors or solicitors.
Okay. All right.
But the problem happens
Makes
when
sense. I've always been very curious about
exactly
this.
the problem
Yeah.
happens when they overlap. It's like nurse and a
Yeah.
doctor in vague terms.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now, something that I have been seeing, I think, a bit more of on social media. And I don't know whether it's just because there's more of a focus on immigration in Australia right now and around the world. Do you think that there has been an increase in crackdowns of people going against their visa conditions, like working too many hours? Obviously, something went viral a few days last week, I think,
Yep.
of an international student. I think he got caught driving Uber and working over his hours, and he's been deported. So do you think that there's been a crackdown on this, or is it just more in the spotlight now?
No, I think so. I would say there is a crackdown, and I've always also alarmed some of the people who talk to me and say they're doing this, and I see them coming to the gray area of law. That just because the department is not taking any strict actions doesn't mean they're never going to do it. Department of Home
Yeah.
Affairs is run
Okay.
by individuals, humans like us. They also have their capacity. Now,
Yeah.
they are increasingly making efforts to crack down. Let's say one example is employers who do dodgy sponsorships,
Yeah.
or students who come here to do a degree and then they lower the level of their degree, they go into diploma or something completely random.
Okay.
Similarly, students
Yeah.
who violate their visa conditions. So
Yeah.
now, of course, it is very difficult for any department to be able to have an attention to detail on all these violations at each time. Right? It's not practically, possible unless the Department of Home Affairs team is going to grow tenfold, which is of course going to take some time,
Sure.
right? So now here's
Yeah.
the thing. Now when they see the system being misused time and again, why are they going to sit quiet? Maybe they will
True.
let it go or let it slide. But right now, they just want to make sure, also because of the whole political scenarios, the elections coming up.
Yes. I was going to
This
say,
is where you
usually
see
election time.
exactly where you see this kind of activities ramping up.
Yeah.
It's always
True.
better to be safe than sorry. So yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And I know last year there were a lot of immigration changes, like policies and rules and things like that. So, what do you think migrants and students should be aware of when planning their future in Australia because of these changes?
Well, okay. No matter how much awareness you have, it's always, I think, so immigration law is the second most complex law in Australia after taxation law. And it's the,
Oh, God.
yeah, and it's the most, or I would say most evolving, most changing law for the reason that this law is towards migrants, and migrants don't have a voting right. So no matter how many times they change it, who's going to say anything about it? Which,
That's a very good point, actually. I've never looked at it from that perspective. Yes,
right.
that's so true.
So that is why the changes in immigration are inevitable. It's always going to change.
Yeah.
To give you, I would say that the change that I disliked the most was last year when they reduced the age limit to get a work visa after having completed the
Yeah.
degree to 35 years. I had a client who came here with his family. He was 34 when he came, and by the time he was finishing his degree, which is this year, sometime he's going to turn 36. Now he has a wife and two kids. He came with so many hopes, and now it's all on the drain because he can't get a work visa. He left his well-paying
Yeah.
career job. Now, the reason I'm giving this example is because no matter how much you plan, it is based on factors that are ever changing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't plan and just let it be on luck or faith or God or whoever you trust. You still got a plan, and again, it comes to down to what I've repeatedly said: get on calls or get advice from 3, 4, 5 different immigration advisors. See who you feel you can trust, and also understand your options.
Yeah.
Don't get involved with, like, say, some. A lot of times what happens is my client who has a very straightforward strategy designed for them comes to me and says, oh, my sister-in-law or my brother sent me this video. If you do this course, you go to get your VR. And I finally tell them, please unfollow everybody.
I bet that happened.
I'm like, please unfollow every immigration advisor from your Instagram. Just follow me. And I laugh when I say that, but I tell them that, look,
Yeah.
if you if you try to get on every horse that you see on the way, you're going to fall. You just need to ride on one horse
True.
and get to your destination slowly
Yeah.
but steadily. But if you keep hopping from one horse to the
Yeah.
other, you're never going to reach your destination. So,
Yeah.
uh, having a little bit of faith, because of course the field is so much ever changing, so you can't really go without having that faith and positivity and manifestation, I would
Yeah.
say. But more importantly, strategic planning and execution. You have your goals, you have your deadlines. If you need to
Mhm.
complete 5 things to get to your permanent residency and you've got 2 years, then leaving out the last 6 months as a buffer in the 1.5 years you have, plan, okay, in the first 6 months I'm going to achieve this, then next 3 months this, then next 3 months this, then next 3 months this.
Yeah.
And if you are not able to achieve those goals, then having a backup strategy to see what you could do. And that is always case to case.
Mm.
So, I mean, I can't really say what
Yeah.
backup strategy in common as a common answer, but then students should, if they want a future in Australia, along with this, one very important point that I definitely don't want to miss is getting acquainted with the Aussie ways, right? A lot of people I meet or I talk to, they are so not ready to unlearn their own ways because
Yeah.
wherever they are coming
Yeah.
from, they have their own sort of experiences, learnings. Some people think that you can only get to the goal by misusing the system. Right. I can speak for
Yeah.
my own country, man. I'm an Indian. And when I was here, I was like, there's a very common word called jugaad, which is like finding a way.
I love it.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I'm like,
This is, by the way, this is an Indian English word only.
yo, is it?
It doesn't. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Because I use it a lot, jugad,
Okay.
jugad, and it's something I try and explain to my family and friends when they're doing a quick fix for something, and I'm like, that's jugad. And then when I try and explain what it is, if you look it up online, it actually says Indian
Oh,
English.
wow. I didn't know that. That's something
Yeah.
new I learned.
Yeah.
That's good. So,
Yes, but sorry, I love it. Please
absolutely. So
continue.
now, if you're like, if people want to find a quick fix for everything, then a quick fix often leads to 10 more issues. They say, so
Yeah.
you can't really, if you need 1 year of experience to get the skills assessment, you need that. You can't be like, okay, I'm going to do a jugaad with an employer where they give me pay slips and they do this and I'll get and then, so these kind of shortcuts. And I suggest my clients that it's best to stay away from these things because just because it worked out for someone in the past doesn't mean it'll work out for you too. Someone in the past didn't get caught, but doesn't mean you won't. I have
Exactly.
one case where my current client, he listened to some agent. Again, there are sometimes even some agents and lawyers are also they do not have the best interest of their client. So they got him to pay a lot
Yeah.
of money in cash, got paperwork sorted through a company which never existed, and the department found out his visa application, permanent visa application, was not just refused, but him and his family was banned for 3 years from applying any other Australian visa.
Yeah.
And the
True.
poor client didn't even know. He thought that whatever the agent's doing is in his best interest. So now we are appealing
Okay.
it. And so the point I'm trying to make here is if you're in a new country, it has its systems, it has its rules. You should follow them and not try to find a quick fix.
Yeah.
And if you do more often than that, if you were good at what you do, good professional, if not permanent residency, your employer will be willing to sponsor you. You'll find a pathway to stay,
Yeah.
but don't find shortcuts.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so important. Yes, this is incredible advice because I think in regards to, I think people, let's say from high risk countries where they are obviously wanting to immigrate for a better life and better opportunities, sometimes I think that not everyone, obviously, I think there are a minority of a group of people that do try and want to find shortcuts and want to get things the easier way because they want it there and then and right now. And you're right, just because your friend of a cousin or whatever didn't get caught doesn't mean that you won't. That's something really important to acknowledge and to remember, definitely.
Absolutely. And I would say you being modest or humble by saying that there's minority of the group. I think there's and also all different kinds of people and professionals are there. I don't want to say anything ill about anyone, but I just feel that if you're in a new country, try to adapt to its ways rather than sticking to
Yeah.
what you've learned in the past
Yes.
wherever you were. Because in that
Yeah.
those countries, in those systems, maybe you needed a quick fix, you needed to pay somebody a ransom and get your work done. But that's not how it
Yes.
works
Exactly.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly right. And that is something that I do see here in India is that you can pay people to get whatever you need. And I don't mean illegally. I just mean generally speaking, like if you need something done, you pay someone and it's very quick. It's a very quick process in those sorts of things. It's so funny because some things can take bloody 10 years here, but then other things are just like this.
Correct. Or if you know somebody influential, you can get your work done.
Exactly.
But
It's all about who you know.
yeah, but
Yeah.
that's not how it generally works here in Australia, at least at the ground level. I don't know. I'm not
Exactly.
that big shot of a lawyer
Yeah.
yet to comment on what happens once
Yeah.
you have those connections. But like
Yeah.
when somebody tells me that, do you not have any connection? Can you not get me an invite? I'm like, no. I mean,
Yeah.
I was like, even if I had that connection, I'd be ashamed of asking for such a favor from
Yeah.
the government, saying that please give my client an invite because they're my client.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I also really appreciate what you said. And this is where I think there's a bit of an overlap in what we do, where you said that you do have to try and unlearn and relearn and adapt to your new country or the new culture of the country that's welcomed you. That's so important. And that will really help have a smoother integration into your new life if you do try and adapt. And I don't mean forgetting where you come from and forgetting your beliefs and your values. It's learning how to have your beliefs and values coexist in the country that you're in. But it's a really fine balance.
Correct.
And this is something that I do. You see a lot on social media and you see the really shitty comments. You see really the ones I'm talking about. There's unfortunately a really terrible rhetoric at the moment around the world about immigrants and immigration, and people are really quick to blame immigrants for the problems of the country because they're the easiest target. And obviously I live in India and I know I definitely do have privilege being a white person here. However, I still have ways, I still need to adapt to the country and the culture of the country I'm living in.
Absolutely.
I still have to find ways to integrate smoothly. I still have to find ways to respect the culture and the customs, whilst also keeping my values and keeping my beliefs in check too. It's a really hard balance to try and maintain. But if you're able to find that balance, it makes your integration smoother.
Absolutely. And it's all about at least trying to find that integration and not be alien to it. It's saying, oh, this is how I am. This is who I am. And I'm not going to learn. Then
that
why
doesn't
did you
work.
come? Why did you switch the country?
Exactly.
Just be where you are. Like a simple example is
Yeah.
right now you're in India. I mean, it's a common practice in Australia to call people by their names, but that's not a common practice in
Yeah.
India. But then if you like, no, if somebody's like 20 years elder to me in India, for example, some aunt, and I'm not going to call them aunt, I'm just going to call them Jyoti. It's okay, there's going to be some repercussions of it. So this is a small example, but I see a lot of
Yeah.
people in Australia so glued to that, okay, I'm not going to adapt now.
Yeah.
And I think adapting is the best survival technique.
Yeah, definitely. Because you're right, though. If you don't want to adapt, why did you go? You're just going for the benefits of that country.
Yeah.
But you can't go for the benefits of that country if you're not going to respect.
Correct.
Country
It's like I
as
want the
well.
Australian citizenship, but I don't want to become an Australian. Like that's not how it works, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I hosted a networking event for women last week, I think it was, or the week before. And I talked about ways that you can integrate smoothly while keeping your own values and things like
Oh,
that.
wow.
And something I talked about was I actually looked on Reddit.
Yes.
Reddit's pretty intense, but I looked up how can an immigrant integrate into Australian culture? Because you hear people on social media say you have to integrate, immigrants aren't integrating. But what does that mean to an Australian? And the comments were actually really interesting. They weren't nasty at all. And I think they're very straightforward. learn the language, understand English enough to have a conversation or engage in small talk. Most Australians don't really care what religion you follow as long as you don't push your beliefs onto them.
True.
You want to be Hindu, you want to be Christian, you don't want to follow religion, don't follow. But don't push your beliefs onto another person. That's where conflict happens.
True.
Is when you're pushing your beliefs and values. People don't really care if you want to go to the mandir or go to the Gurdwara on a Sunday as long as you're not pushing your beliefs. If people are curious about, tell me more about your religion, you can share your beliefs, but don't say, oh, Christianity is bad. You shouldn't be a Christian. You should be this instead.
True.
That's where the conflict kind of occurs. I'm not sure if that's something that you have seen or witnessed from your perspectives as an immigrant.
Yes. From where I come from as well, it's not our intention to push our beliefs onto someone, but the belief is so strong that it's pursued as we being pushy, which I had to learn and tame down some of my words. When I'm a Jain. Now, Jainism is a very small sect, and then when people ask me, like, we don't eat roots, the vegetables that grow under the soil, so when they're very curious. I mean, even Australians that I meet, they're like, when I go to restaurant, and some of the clients that I have who are restaurant owners, they're like, what do we cook for you? Do you just want tomatoes? And then I explain them that this is the entire belief system around it. They actually listen to you very patiently and they try to understand it. But then if I say, oh, eating meat is wrong, you shouldn't never do this, eating this is wrong, that's when it makes them feel like an indirect attack, which nobody likes.
Yes, exactly. That's so true. Yeah.
And then sometimes a lot of places where I go to, or a lot of people that I speak to, they say, and I don't know if I don't take it as a compliment, but they say like, oh, but you don't seem to be an Indian origin person. And I'm like, what does that mean? But then I realized that when I come to a country, or when I go out anywhere to travel or to study or to as an immigrant, I'm not just representing me, I'm representing the whole country. So the way I'm going to behave, because nobody is here, most people have not interacted with immigrants from different countries. So whoever comes here, for them, the image that we build as immigrants is what's going to stay in their minds. So if they see most of the people being notorious, not following the rules, finding shortcuts, that's the image that they'll build for us.
True.
So
100%. So important.
So making sure that you adapt, coming back to the discussion, you adapt. And difficulty in adapting, I have had so many good Australian mentors who I have had very open discussions with. I've told them that, look, I'm not really willing to adapt an Aussie accent, but what is it that I can do so that without adapting it, I can still be part of the group? Because nobody likes feeling left out. And one suggestion I got was, this was from a lawyer or a barrister that I was assisting. He's like, because in your mother tongue you speak very fast. When you speak English, you also speak very fast. It's like, slow down. Take pauses. Let the other person understand.
This is what I also tell my students. Yeah.
So after I started doing that, it's been great.
It's half the challenge. The speed is literally half the challenge. And this is what I say to people. Yes. Oh, look, the proof is in the pudding.
But yeah, okay. I hope you got the answer to the question in terms of it's an elaborate one.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I did ask I did put a question box up on Instagram asking people if they had any questions that I could ask an immigration lawyer. So the first one is, let's say there is someone from a high-risk country that has applied for a tourist visa and it keeps getting rejected. So what is your advice on, should they apply again? And if they do apply again, is there any extra evidence they should provide or anything else?
Sure. And this is a very common issue that has come up in the last 1 year. And I would not really condemn, but I'd say what the department's doing is something not very nice because they're not letting partners unite. And it's if somebody's married
Yeah.
to somebody from Afghanistan, or we had a client from Libya and then from India, all of them are waiting for their wives or husbands or partners to come and meet them for like 1.5, 2 years. Now, talking about the refusals of tourist visas or refusal of any visa, it is safe and recommended to apply again only if there is a major change in the circumstances. And what
Okay.
I mean by major change in the circumstances is, let's say, first instance you applied, you were not working, and now you have a job. But doesn't mean you get a job today and you apply for it tomorrow. You be in that job for 3 months. You can
Yeah.
show payment evidences and show, look, I have something that I need to stick to and I need to come back for. Because the main reason for
Yeah.
tourist visa refusals is genuine stay or genuine temporary entrance
True.
GTE criteria, and
Yeah.
you can show evidence of you having something to come back for. There's no point in reapplying, of course, right? Because everything is
Yeah.
the same, and this is a mistake a lot of people do. Like just yesterday, I was talking to a client who got married, and he's like, "Look, man, my I want to get my wife here. I've been single for like almost 5 years now. I'm married. I want to get my wife here. The wife is also getting, I'd say, not really, but every partner wants to be with each other, of course. So she's like, my wife also think, she's like, you need to get me here within 3 months. He's like, let's apply for the tourist visa. If it gets rejected, we will keep applying until they approve it. I'm like, it's not a lotto that you keep buying until you hit the lottery. It's you don't do it because it's not a good strategy. So if it's been refused more than a couple of times, then seek advice. And um,
Yeah.
more than I'd say, even for the advisors, I feel like they should. I mean, I can attempt and get the fees, but if I can see that there is no point in attempting, it is. I generally say, tell them on very upfront that,
Yeah.
look, I don't see a point. You shouldn't be wasting your money. Again, sometimes they like it, sometimes because I've not told them what they want to hear. They'll go to someone else, end up
Yeah.
applying, and then lose their money.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I actually wrote this down when you were talking before about cases that you take on or that you might not take on. So you kind of answered that. But are there situations where you don't take on cases, like where you hear someone's story or situation and you're very frank and honest and you say, look, that I can't help you. That's not going to work. Does that happen often?
I would say probably 3 out of 10 times or 2 out of 10 times if I were to give you a ratio.
Yeah.
And generally, these instances are where one, they don't have the required amount of evidences or they don't meet the eligibility criteria, right? Because talking about visa, if I talk about permanent residency, there are 3 steps. Any visa has a few steps. Now, if somebody is eligible to complete the first step, but they're not going to get through the second step, then what's the point of giving them hope and saying, yeah, you pay the fees, I'll get my fees, but
True.
what's the point of getting them stuck
Yeah.
halfway, which is what a lot of professionals
Yeah.
would end up doing because they can at least get the fees for the first stage, but I don't. Second instance is where they want me to do something dodgy, right? And they come to me and
Yeah.
be
Okay.
like, I have,
God.
yeah, yes, I have spoken to this employer. He's going to give me a job on paper. He's going to deposit money in my account, and I'm going to work in cash somewhere else. And after getting some work experience, I'll get a sponsorship. I say, good luck with your application. I can't handle it. You, if somebody else is ready to handle it, no problems. And yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the third,
That's also your career and your license on the line, isn't it?
absolutely, and maybe, as I said, because you're dealing with a class of people which are vulnerable, more often than not, even if they are scammed, they don't complain. The case that I was talking
Yeah.
about, where the family got scammed because of a fraudulent agent, I asked them to lodge a police complaint. They said, no, we don't want to get into all this mess. Who's going to go to the police and court? And
Yeah.
we have so many other battles to deal with. We don't want one more battle.
Yeah. Okay.
They're right, but
Yeah, that's sad.
that it's sad. So yes, my license is on the line, but more importantly, it's, I think, personal and an ethics. I don't want to have a practice where I'm like, if you handle 100 cases, you could mess up 3 or 4. No, because those 3 or 4 are not cases, they are lives. So I'm better off handling maybe
Yeah.
10 or 15. I'm happy with that, but making sure everybody gets
Yeah.
what they deserve. So
Yeah.
That's why I
Yeah,
don't end up
absolutely.
taking such dodgy or
Fair enough. And that's good for you.
yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Just back onto the topic of the tourist visa for a high risk applicant. So what documents should they provide? So, I mean, let's say hypothetically it's a partner situation. Okay. So, what kind of documents should they apply if they do want to visit their partner in Australia, but they don't want to migrate? They just want to visit.
Okay. So now, if uh, first of all, they need to have strong incentives to return home. If they don't have
Yeah.
it, when strong incentives to return home are a, a good, well paying job, probably
Mm-hmm.
a career history. So, not somebody who's been employed for just like 2, 3 months or 6 months, like somebody who's
Okay.
been employed for a few years. Savings in form of bank deposits, fixed deposits, property, etc. And I know that a lot of applicants may not have all of this, and in such situations, for the peace of mind, yes, they can try a tourist visa once, but if it gets refused and if it's a partner situation, then it is always recommended to lodge a partner visa and then lodge a visa under the family sponsored stream, which
Yeah.
always comes up with a condition called no further stay. So that ways they can come and live with their partner temporarily.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, right. And what about someone who might have their own business rather than having a job?
Right. So in that, so again, now having own
A
business,
lot of
yeah, no
hypotheticals.
hypotheticals plus it's these are all real life situations that I deal with on a day to day basis. So that's why I was smiling because a client came to me and said I have my own business. I'm like, okay, great. What kind of business? And he gave me the some of the details, and he's like, I'm like, do you have a registration? What is the revenue you generate on a yearly basis? Do you have documents, invoices, income tax? He's like, no, I have only paid. Like, he's like, I do a business worth 40 lakhs rupees, which is around $80,000 per annum, but my income tax only shows an income of $8,000. Now, just so I'm like, he's like, I can
It's a problem with the cash society too,
exactly,
isn't it?
exactly. That's where a lot of and this is
Yeah.
also causing issues for student visas because a lot of people, a lot of students' parents in the developing countries, they have business, they have money, but a lot of their income is cash, and
And they don't declare it.
and they don't declare it. And then when it comes to showing it for the purpose of the visa, somehow the bank statement, which was on an average having a balance of $2,000, $3,000, has suddenly has a balance of $60,000, which is
Yeah.
unusual.
The sudden, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of red flags there. When you think about it from here, though, it's just so normal. But when you, an outsider looking in, it's like red flag.
Exactly. Like that's what they think. And then I've had one uh, client reach out to me in his refusal letter. It was clearly written for the visitor visa. And he had all the genuine reasons. He is from an African country and his father migrated or took refuge probably around 17 years ago. And since 17 years, that poor guy had never seen his father. He lived there with his mother, and then his father and mother got separated. So a lot of like a complete whole saga. He applied for a visitor visa to come here and visit his father. Because his father took refuge, he cannot go to that country from where he took refuge. So
True. Okay.
his visitor visa was refused, saying that we don't think you are coming here as a genuine temporary entrant. And it was written in his refusal letter that the funds you're showing, we believe that those funds were just transferred into your account for the purpose of the visa.
For the purpose. Yeah, okay.
So me answering what kind of evidence or what kind of documents to provide is always going to be half baked because if those documents are not genuine or there's no genuine trail, then no matter how many documents we provide, it's not going to be enough.
Yeah. So tricky. They definitely don't make it easy, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
I think they should make the. I mean, I think if I were to even get a chance to make some reforms, I'd first thing, visitor visa, whoever is inviting them, just take a $15,000 to $20,000 bond from them, and if the person who they are
Yeah.
inviting don't return, something like this,
Yeah.
like a middle ground.
Because some countries do this, don't they?
Yeah, I
Are there countries that do this? It
um
sounds familiar.
in Australia also it happens when you get a visa under the family sponsored stream. There's a declaration.
Oh, maybe that's where I've heard it.
There's a declaration which says that if the person doesn't return, we have the right to ask you to pay a security bond.
Sure. Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And to finish up, last question, what advice would you give to someone who wants to migrate to Australia, but they don't know where to start?
I'd say get some clarity on your goals. Are you coming here to genuinely study and then decide the future course of actions as in when you experience Australia, or are you coming here to permanently migrate with the intention? So, first, clear intention. Second, getting, as I said, the right guidance. Right? If your intention is to migrate permanently, then better off talking to an immigration lawyer or a migration agent. And third, yeah, don't listen to, as I said, friends, family, or people who are not experienced in this domain, because free or advice often costs a lot. So this is what I'd say to anybody planning their journey in Australia, stepping stones, and yeah, not get again. Just because I sound serious sometimes, it's not something that I want to make people afraid of. But yeah, don't take it too lightly. Don't be too afraid. Just find your balance and get the right guidance, and you should be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, that's the perfect advice. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
It's straightforward, but that's the best advice usually is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But sometimes people don't want to hear that. Like you said, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably
Yeah,
is.
true.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. And Akash, before we do our goodbyes, how can people contact you if they want to know more, if they want to speak to you?
Sure. So I've got my Instagram. It's called The Unfiltered Lawyer, and that's why I talk like how I do. I have a website called madmigration.com. So you can reach out to me via Instagram, website. My contact details are there. There's a link. Usually the first step when anybody reaches out to me is to book a time with me using a link. And as part of this session that we've done, there will be a unique link for anybody who follows you and wants to reach out to me, so that they can get the booking, 20 minutes booking free,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
they can book that
I'll
call
pop it
and
in
we
the
can take it forward
description.
from there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This conversation has been really interesting. Really interesting, very enlightening, and it's been really great to chat. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Amanda. Same here. It was lovely being here and spreading some awareness and hoping to impact one life at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. Thank you.